typical night at the University of Alberta, where a group of volunteers called the Safe Walkers were walking students home as a precaution after a night out. Ashley Moores and another volunteer called Safira had just dropped somebody off and were walking back through the mall when they heard a loud bang. They weren't worried, but they decided to go and investigate. When they got to the doors of the ATM machine, they saw blood seeping from behind the doors. They could hear a young man inside screaming and shouting, and he was begging them to call 911. As the police pulled up to the campus mall that morning, around 12 a.m, they came across another dead body. The man had been shot, and he was wearing a security uniform and still had his gun in his holster. As one of the policemen stayed with the body, the others went inside to investigate. As soon as the police saw the blood seeping from behind the doors, they knew they had to act fast. They grabbed a battering ram, a sledgehammer and an axe, and did all they could to get through the secure doors. They didn't know what was going on behind those doors, but they knew they had to help the man inside.
But the heavy steel door is locked from the inside. This cell phone video shows Johnson trying to smash his way in.
It was a heavily reinforced steel door, but there was a steel grate for ventilation. And so I then began striking about 8 to 10 times until I could get a very small hole in the vent itself. It's probably about that big, just about the size of a nickel or a dime.
When they finally got into the room, they were met with a horrific sight. 2 of the security guards had been shot point blank in the head, and one was hanging on for dear life.
I saw more guards dressed in G4S uniform down inside the room. There's 2 more that I could see, and I could see the foot of another one, and that was where the sound was coming from.
Johnson isn't sure what to think. Is this the scene of a gunfight? Is the shooter one of the bodies lying inside? Or is he hiding somewhere in the mall?
The 3 victims that were found in the room were all part of a security team that worked for G4S, and they were delivering money to ATM machines in the area. The 2 team members that had passed away were 26-year-old Michelle Shigelski and 35-year-old Brian Elizik. The other team member was the first victim they had found, and he was 39-year-old Edgardo Rejano. The last victim was rushed to hospital for a life-saving operation, and his name was Matthew Schumann. But where was the last member of the team? Travis Baumgartner. Was he kidnapped, or was there something more sinister going on? Hi, my name's Sara Jade and welcome to my channel, where we talk about true crime, unsolved cases and more. Now let's get on with this week's case. Travis Baumgartner was born on the 16th of May 1991, and he grew up with his mum in Sherwood Park in Alberta, Canada. His friends described him as smart, funny and a warm-hearted guy, but things started to change about a year after graduation. After graduation, he thought things were going to come easy to him. However, he soon learnt that his life was going to be a lot harder than he first thought. He also started smoking synthetic marijuana, which his friends described changed his mood completely. After graduating from Bev Facey High School in Sherwood Park in 2009, Travis moved from job to job in the oil and construction business, but he always wanted to be a policeman. When he failed to get in, he applied for G4S to work as a security guard. His fellow trainee staff at G4S described him as an immature kid who was more impressed with the romance of having a gun and a badge than being professional. On his dating website, Travis described himself as a laid-back man, but this was reported as far from the truth. He would have these extreme mood swings where his behaviour would change abruptly. Things were not going so well at home either. Having been in and out of jobs and purchased himself a brand new Ford F-150 truck, he was spiralling into debt. He owed around $58,000 and started borrowing from friends and family. He lived in his mum's basement, and on the 15th of June 2012, after working for G4S for only 3 months, he got into a huge argument with his mum. She also was having money troubles and wanted to raise his rent to twice a month. After getting into a heated argument and making his mum cry, he stormed out of the house, telling her he wouldn't be back but would get her her money. His mood got progressively worse when he started his shift and the van broke down. They had to wait for a replacement, but soon he was on his way with his 4 team members, 2 that were training beside him that night. 5 hours into their shift, and only 2 hours after they started their cash delivery round, they reached the Alberto University. They pulled up to the Hub Mall where they were going to fill up the ATM machines. Edgardo stayed in the car to watch over the van, while the others made their way into the Hub Mall. They made their way upstairs to the ATM vestibule. As they went inside, they securely locked the door so they could fill up the machines. Brian and Michael started to fill up the machines, while Michelle watched over them, making sure everything was okay. Travis's job was to watch the door and make sure that they were safe. As they were loading up the machines, with their back to Travis, he pulled out his gun and shot Michelle straight in the head. As she fell to the floor dead, he turned to Matthew and shot him in the side of the face. He then turned to Brian and shot him twice, killing him instantly. None of them had time to grab their guns. He then shot twice into the wall, before leaving the room, securely locking the door behind him. He quickly made his way down the stairs and through the Hub Mall, reloading his weapon in the process. He made his way over to the van and shot Edgardo in the head. As he fell to the floor, he shot him twice more, before escaping in the van. After ditching the G4S van, Travis made his way to Sherwood Park. He drove over to two of his friends' house, which he owed money to, and left money underneath their car. He then destroyed his phone. He then drove back to his house, where he changed his clothes, where his mum lay sleeping in the next room. He left his bloody clothes and boots on the side, and swapped over his licence plates with his mum. Finally, he left $64,000 on his mum's kitchen table, before speeding off towards the British Columbia border. He only stopped to dispose of the bulletproof vest and the gun into the river. When the police were called to the Hub Mall, they first thought that Travis was another victim and had been kidnapped.
Read name tags, so we knew who the victims were, and by a process of elimination, we knew who our victim wasn't, and that was Travis Baumgartner.
Travis Baumgartner, the trainee guard, missing along with the armored truck and more than $360,000 in cash. Is he a hostage, or is he dead too?
However, as more and more evidence came to light, they soon changed their mind. After doing background checks on Travis, they found out about the large debt that he owed. They also found some very strange messages on his social media account. On the 19th of April 2012, he wrote a message saying, "2 days to training, I get a gun." On May 2nd, 2012, he wrote, "100% shooting test, I am a god." And on the 1st of June 2012, he wrote, "I wonder if I'll make the 6 o'clock news if I start popping people off." His friend Dylan also came forward and said he'd received a message from Travis that night saying tonight is the night. Travis used to joke all the time about robbing the place, but none of them took him seriously, and Dylan just thought this was another joke. His two friends also awoke that morning to find the cash underneath their cars. They called the police, worried that Travis had dropped the money, and returned all the money to the police. Travis's mum woke up that morning and heard a news report about a robbery. She then found the $64,000 on her table and her son's bloody boots, so she called the police. By midday that day, they thought that Travis was involved, and by 3 p.m, they had a warrant for his arrest. Miraculously, at the same time, Matthew had pulled through from his life-saving operation to remove the bullet from his brain, and was now recovering in hospital. Travis's mum, Sandy, worked with the police, and she released a press statement straight to Travis. It said, "You're not alone, Trav. I love you and I want to help you. Call the police now and end this peacefully. I'm so sorry that we had an argument last night and there were bad words said between us. But I want you to come home and do the right thing. Please, Travis, I love you and I'm pleading with you with all my heart to end this without any further bloodshed." After 40 hours of being on the run, Travis approached the Linden Wash border. As he approached, ready to cross, a license plate scanner picked up Sandy's license plate. The police surrounded the truck. They pulled him out the van and wrestled him to the floor before he could reach the border.
Mr. Baumgartner was arrested peacefully and without incident, and which was the best outcome that we could have possibly hoped for.
No weapons were found either on him or in the vehicle, but a search of the vehicle did discover a small backpack. That backpack contained roughly $330,000 in Canadian currency.
Once he was in the holding cell, Travis started to act delirious and said he couldn't remember anything that happened over the last 4 days. He'd said he'd been abducted and he had to get this backpack to Seattle before his family were all killed. He was telling the police that he was David Webb, which was actually a character from the Jason Bourne movies. During his investigation, one of the policemen kept calling him Trevor by accident, until eventually he leaned forward and said it's Travis actually, correcting him and blowing his own cover. He was then put back into his holding cell with an undercover cop.
I was using hollow points too, so just brains are mush.
Yeah.
They go in and they don't come out.
All it takes is one.
Well, apparently not, because the fourth guy.
Yeah, well, the guy must have had a fucking head of steel.
I remember. The last guy took 3 shots.
3?
Yep.
3 to go down. Jesus, he's strong, eh?
Yeah. Don't think about it. It's over and done with now.
Didn't see it coming.
Nope. None of
How
them.
the with guns?
They couldn't draw fast enough.
No skills.
And literally, probably 3 shots within a matter of 2 seconds.
That's fast.
Yeah. It was crazy. The mafia would have been impressed.
No professional.
In September 2013, Travis pleaded guilty in Edmonton court to 2 accounts of first-degree murder, 1 account of second-degree murder, and attempted murder. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, and no signs of mental illness. So what were his motives? He said, "I think I was just mad at everyone." He had no real reason to kill them and just did it to get the money. At the trial, Eddie's wife gave an impact statement. She said, "He's never coming home to us, and I still find myself trying to call his phone." She hates him for taking her husband so violently. Her youngest son stood on a chair behind her and at one point reached over and wiped a tear from her face.
He said, "There's been an accident at the U of A. Your husband was one of the guys that got killed. And the kids were there. Xavier started crying. Zyler started crying. What went through my head was, oh my God, I'm 32. I can be widowed. Like, 2 kids to raise. I just talked to him yesterday. He dropped me off at work, and next thing you know, he's gone." Xavier's Father's Day present for Ed. They made a birdhouse. And that's exactly Xavier's thought when I told him that Daddy's in an accident. And he said, "Oh no, I made him a birdhouse for Father's Day. It was supposed to be my present."
Michelle had only been married 2 months before the shooting, and her husband described how he'd robbed him of the perfect woman. He was exhausted and wanted to end his life, but he knew his wife wanted him to keep going. Michelle was described as a courageous woman, had a quirky sense of humour. She was an avid reader, wrote a blog, learned Chinese, and was into belly dancing.
I remember hanging up the phone. I remember coming around the side of the desk to get to the door. And I must have been calling you at that point because I got to the top of the stairs, which is like 10 feet away. And Peter was there, and we just
collapsed on the stairs.
Yeah.
Sat there and cried.
Brian's parents, Mike and Diane, described how he'd robbed his son of watching his daughter grow up. He would never see her graduate, never walk down the aisle, and never see his grandchildren.
When Mike returned from the G4S compound and came in through the door,
He grabbed me and
we grabbed each other.
Matthew, who couldn't face going to court that day, had his statement read out. He described how he'd taken his health, his career, and his pending marriage away from him. He was a firefighter for the military and took a second job at G4S. The shooting happened on his 3rd day on the job. He lost a portion of his brain and can't feel the right side of his body. He has vision lost and has risk of seizures.
I couldn't see anymore, couldn't hear anymore. And so I just figured, well, I'm going to go out in a fight. This is the end. I mean, whoever it was heard me moaning or screaming, so they were coming back to finish the job.
He had to wear a helmet and learn to read and write again, and the stress took a toll on his relationship. The families are now suing G4S and Travis for wrongful death, and G4S are reviewing their policies. Travis was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years on September 11, 2013. He is the first multi-murderer to be sentenced under a new Canadian law, which allowed judges to order sentences to be served consecutively rather than concurrently, which meant that he'll have to serve all 40 years before getting parole. At the time, it was seen as the harshest sentence given in Canada since execution was abolished in 1962. Travis will be 61 in 2052 when he's eligible for parole. Throughout his whole trial, he just stood there with a disinterested look on his face and his arms crossed. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to check out this one, which goes through how a woman nearly got away with murder. Thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.
You call me a saint, but you know I'm a stranger, a willing